Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jonathan Steinberg. I am the 2023-2024 president of the Northeastern Educational Research Association. It's great to have you here for our third webinar of the year. I'm pleased to introduce our presenters for this afternoon's webinar on co-creation and social responsibility. First, let me introduce Dr. Jane Shore. Jane and I actually worked together when I was at ETS for a number of years. She is now at the Revolution School in Philadelphia. She is the school co-founder and the founder of School of Thought, a cross-school, cross-sector learning organization. Joining her is Sydney Schwartz, also at the Revolution School. She's a DEI leader, an English and Spanish teacher, and a founding educator, and both have played various roles in the founding of Revolution School. Co-creation is one of the school's guiding principles, and that means co-creation of the curriculum with young people, co-creation of opportunities with community partners, and the co-creation and iteration of projects and pilots with the people involved. I knew Jane had been operating in this space for a while, and I thought it would be great to have her present to NERA as we are now transitioning from spring conference season into getting ready for our own conference, which will take place October 8th, 9th, and 10th in Trumbull, Connecticut. Our call for workshops remains open for about another 10 days or so, and our call for proposals is open through May 24th. If you have any questions about any of those things, you can take a look at our website, www.nera-education.org. And if you saw the invite for this webinar on our social media, Facebook and LinkedIn, you probably saw some very nice artwork that was put together. Jane was a part of that, and I'm going to put in the chat one of two links. One of her colleagues, Sarah, get the name right, Sarah Singer-Quast, had a related essay which was helping to be the influence for this session. So I'm going to stop talking now and turn things over to Jane and Sydney. I just ask as housekeeping that you put with the exception of the presenters, of course, make sure your microphones are on mute, but feel free to put things in the chat throughout, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. All right, Jane, Sydney, all yours.
Sure. Well, thank you for showing up. I know that it's a hard thing to do at the end of a day. I am going to start us up here. I want to say first that this is not the typical research sort of presentation. We're not going to go through our curiosities and give you research questions and talk about our methodology. We're really talking about a framework for thinking about research that matters. And we're also thinking about the ways in which we go about diving into questions, creating new things, and sourcing our curiosities and knowledge. So what we are going to do is talk a little bit about those frameworks. And I'm going to start by saying our title, I actually wanted to call it With Not For, but I felt like that wasn't descriptive enough. You would have no idea what we were going to talk about. But the idea of With Not For is really what roots the work that we're going to share. The idea that we want to work with each other, not for each other, when we're engaging in co-creation. So if you can take yourself off mute, it's totally fine if you can't. You can also just go into the chat, your name, where you are, and your job title. We're just starting with this question. I'm going to take a second with this one. And if you can't do it, I'm actually just going to move ahead. I don't know if you're driving or because this is an after school time. So look at that. You do have a beach background.
Yeah, beach background. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Tajwani. I'm the Director of Research and Evaluation for the Culturally Responsive and Equitable Systems content area at WestEd. I'm based in Southern California, and yeah, I think I covered everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eduardo. I'm a second year PhD student here at the Research, Educational Measurement and Psychometrics Department at the University of Massachusetts Amherst.
Thank you.
And I'll put in mine, Jonathan Steinberg. I am in Robbinsville, New Jersey, where I work remotely for Eureka Facts, based in Rockville, Maryland. I serve as Director of Research and Analytics.
Thank you. And I know there was another person, and it's totally fine if we can't all introduce ourselves. I'm going to go a little quickly through these questions to make a point. But the next question I would love to hear from at least one person, if you could go off mute, in 2 sentences, 1 or 2. Is there a project or research or otherwise in which you might like to partner? Is anybody working on anything that you could shout out? And
all of our projects, when you say partner, you mean like partner with the community or partner with?
Just research you're doing right now that you're looking for people to partner on, or, share your findings.
Oh, yeah, we are always looking for partners in different capacities. We typically do partner with all the communities that we in terms of who we research and where we do our evaluations. But and we do evaluations in like different spaces, teacher preparation, community schools, DEI and STEM. Those are some of the areas.
Yeah. Thank you, Jacqueline. And I have a feeling that our work, the work that I used to do when I worked with Jonathan, is probably very similar, working with lots of different organizations. I have a third question. There's a reason that we're asking this. What are you working on right now that you're really excited about? It doesn't need to be the research. And I'm asking this, not necessarily, it's sort of a rhetorical question. It's more to make the point that in co-creation, we very frequently, when we connect with others, we're so used to saying what our name is, where we are, our job title. We're so used to doing that when we join a Zoom or when we join a meeting. There are occasions where I don't know about you, Jacqueline, but when I was working for ETS, we very frequently would have these large scale projects we were doing, and we would describe them and recruit from all these wonderful project sites. But we were entering their spaces many times saying, we have this project we could do together. And the third question is the question that we're going to sort of frame our talk with a little bit today, because starting with co-creation really has you starting a few steps back. Before you're not engaging in the same kind of conversation as you might typically engage, where you're networking when you're talking about job titles first, or you're sort of transacting when you're talking about projects. But if you can get into each other's spaces, learn about each other, participate in each other's work, that's the idea that we're going to share a little bit about with regard to co-creation. So my name is Jane Shore, as Jonathan said. I worked for many years. My first job out of grad school was working in a refugee and immigrant program. I was a teacher. I did ESL. I did work in various programs for citizenship and teaching English. And I became very curious on about the ways we learn. My degree and my research that I did for many years was really around, my background is bilingual in special education. My line of work was really on measuring hard to measure things, which was something that we got to do a lot of at ETS. One of the things that I found was that we frequently entered into these really interesting research projects in that middle point where we had a project and we thought, who might want to do this with us? And there seems to be this opportunity to say, let's step a few steps back and start with the people and the purpose and co-create those questions together. I had the opportunity a few years ago to join the founding team of a school in Philadelphia. We are right in the center of the city, and the goal was to maintain that joyful feeling when you get to high school, which doesn't always happen, and to find ways to engage students in meaningful, equitable work that was relevant and authentic. And I have had the great pleasure to get to work with Sid Schwartz. Sid came on a couple of years ago as a founding educator, and we were able to do a lot of co-creation together. So we're going to share a little bit about the model for that, some examples, and one of the details about Sid's background also is that she has had experience doing ethnographic research, engaging and understanding, learning from communities, the kinds of things that matter and the things they care about. And so when she came on to working at Revolution School, there was such a depth of knowledge of how to bring students into that kind of work and engage them in those authentic questions. So, and Sid is going to introduce herself in a bit too. Is there anything you wanted to add, Sid?
I think for now, that's what's important to know, is that I'm a teacher who has a research background. Yeah.
So I'm going to start with this model. This is the model created for the paper that Jonathan shared. And this is the model that I created with my colleague, who at the time was the director of research for an organization called the Philadelphia Youth Network, where I was on the board. The Youth Network is an organization that serves about 20,000 kids in the summer in Philadelphia with work experiences. And it was our task to create frameworks and measurement tools to look at the ways that that network was having an impact. And one of the things that we kept coming back to is that the research itself was very rarely used by people who were in the field. We weren't, the moments and the opportunities to use research were talked about in terms like, you can translate research to practice, or you can build a bridge from research to practice and use research in your classroom. And we saw an opportunity to say, well, what about involving the practitioners, involving and being part of the same culture, so we're not in different places and different silos. So we thought about the stages that we had been through in getting from that place of researching practice and translating research to practice, to connecting with practice and thinking about practice and research together, then relating, so sort of having loops that go from research to practice to research to practice. And the word revolution does come from Revolution School, but we really want to think about the ways in which we can co-create so that we're doing research of practice, research and practice, research with practice, and practice with research, so that it's a shared culture. So we really want to get to that big yellow circle. And this is what Sid and I are going to talk a little bit about, how we can get there, both in the co-creation of the program, opportunities for questions that we're asking, iteration, and outcomes. So today we're going to talk about this idea of co-creation as social responsibility. Then Sid will talk about co-creation in practice. And we'll end with a little co-creation in research, and we'll talk about a research endeavor that we're engaged in right now that has evolved over time, and it's an example of the model in practice. So as I said, and just briefly, Revolution School was founded in 2019 in Center City, Philadelphia, with a mission to break down the walls between learning and life. The idea is that the program reaches out. I'm looking right now out the window into this city, We're right in the center. We're on Broad Street in Philadelphia. We can see City Hall if we sort of, crane our necks to the side. It offers a lot of opportunity for students to engage in authentic work. What we really did though before 2019 is we had 2018 as what we called year zero, and it was a planning year. And we got to connect with all kinds of individuals as we planned our program, from organizations like in public health, in the arts, in technology, and we talked about our school. A lot of them were asking the same questions about education that we were. And we realized that there was the opportunity for us to not just be a school, but be a school of thought that gathered people together who had similar questions and started to dive into those questions, crossing sectors and schools and engaging in learning experiences. I'll add an addendum to all of this. If you think about the timeline, it was 2019, we opened the school, we had this great vision, and then March of that year, COVID struck and it threw everybody off. So some of what we're saying, the years won't look linear. I think that they very infrequently do when you're doing research anyway, but this was our plan in 2019. And School of Thought is now becoming its own learning organization across schools and sectors. What School of Thought does is it brings together schools and sectors to activate these different settings and engage and build community and co-create and commit to learning experiences together. And I'm starting with that because this is part of the way that we are framing a research study that we are doing in partnership with many different organizations right now. We are co-creating this research study, and we'll talk about it. I'll talk about it a little later. I wanted to start though with the reason we think social responsibility is tied to co-creation. And I wanted to ask you, as the members of NERA, what do you think social responsibility is? Does anybody have? I looked up a definition that I can share. But how are you framing it? Jonathan, how are you framing it?
I look at it as, what is your role in contributing to the betterment of the world?
Nice. Yeah. So in searching, I just Googled a definition, but the idea that was offered was it is an ethical framework for work that results in the benefit for the community, the neighborhood, the nation, the world, a framework that results in the benefit for the community. And this, when Jonathan shared the theme with me, the first thing I thought was, if you are looking to benefit the community, if you're looking to do research that benefits the community, that research has to be done using a model that is co-created. So that's where we are now. What do you think is co-creation? And I can give you a definition. Although I know I should have longer wait time as a teacher. Jonathan, do you want to give me the definition of co-creation? What do you think?
Something that is created in partnership with someone. Oh, Jacqueline put something in the chat too.
Oh, okay.
Working with the community to develop programs, policies, etc.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Over the years, one of the things Jonathan pointed out, I have really appreciated this idea of getting visual. It's been a lot of spaces going from a world of research to co-creating a school with the founding team. And there are a couple of things that stand out to me in sort of research not getting to practice sometimes. And one of them is the co-creation. Another one is sometimes the research can feel inaccessible. So started doing some visuals, and this was one of them, thinking about the definition of co-creation. And co-creation, in the definition that we are using, is work that is done with high connection and power with. So what Jacqueline was saying and what Jonathan was saying, you know, this idea that you're connected and you share privileges, you share power. There's not one person leading or a leadership team from one side or the other, as opposed to something that's more transactional where there's low connection, but maybe there's power together. It will feel a lot more transactional when you're, for example, connecting with a research site or a programmatic site, and you don't really know them, but you want to co-create with them. So this high connection is also part of co-creation. If you have high connection, but you still have power over, like there's a leadership team, it's much more paternalistic. And if you have power over and low connection, it's just an authoritarian situation where you're just telling a group what to do. So really, we frame co-creation as having high connection and power with. And some research on the topic of co-creation has found there was a family research project done through Harvard University in 2010. And for actually some of the partners that I was working with at Harvard University's Adult Learning and Literacy Center. And they did a research on what factors contribute to effective co-creation. And effective co-creation was defined in many different ways, but in looking at effective co-creation, that the partners feel heard, there were a lot of qualitative outcomes, and also that they were reaching outcomes that they had shared and desired. And the effective co-creation research that Harvard did found that diverse partners shared vision or an agenda, accountability, where everybody was accountable, they shared measures, and there was a blended leadership, so from all sides. In 2020, I had the opportunity to look at research with colleagues at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education, and we added to this list we came to it with an equity lens. And one of the things we said was those connections need to be sometimes non-organic so that you're reaching beyond the organic boundaries of the ecosystem that you know. And some indicators that those connections are starting to merge are members of those ecosystems begin to advocate for each other and have a shared language. They require continuous communication and co-created outcomes. Co-created outcomes very different from co-created measurement. Measurement are the tools, and the outcomes are the kinds of experiences or the impact that you want to make in the work that you do together. So the way that we see social responsibility and co-creation happening, the magic happens when they overlap. And what Sid's going to be talking about is this idea of social responsibility and co-creation overlapping. One of the things that, as I pass the mic over to Sid, I just want to say, as you listen to her, her beautiful programming, it's really, I think, inspiring, and there's a really clear connection to authentic work, engaging work, and equitable work, which are part of the model that we're promoting. And as you listen from a research lens and from the practice lens, think about the questions that if you were going to work together, what kinds of things could we do to support an educator like Sid, and to think about how we would work together and say, these are the things that are important to you. What are the things that we could do together that could augment the work that you're doing? So I'm going to pass it over to Sid.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna try to do the best that I can with my 4 o'clock teacher brain. And I did a lot of co-creation today actually with my students, so sometimes that can be draining. But I wanna start off and end with these very cool frameworks that Jane gave to me that I actually found myself just picturing a lot as I was thinking through a lot of the work that I do. But I really have 3 examples from my teaching practice this year, working with my high school students, that I want to share with you. And as I talk about them, I would love for you to think about First, the co-creation visual, these quadrants, kind of thinking about when I talk about these examples, what quadrant might they fall into? You'll see that, the connection will vary, the power with, the power over, the power dynamics will shift in some of my examples. So think about that. And then this other visual, this was actually funny for me to think about because it was just, I could see it in so many different ways in a school. Like, are we talking about, educational researchers giving research to me, the teacher, that I'm supposed to implement? Are we talking about research that my students are doing because they do a lot of research when they go out off campus for my classes? Are we talking about research that other community organizations want to do on our school and want to involve our students in? So there was just a lot of ways for me to think about who is the researcher. But one thing that I will say about this chart is that I think a lot of my examples kind of exist in this connection and relation, those 2 points on this graph. And we could think about the translation point. I liked the idea of thinking about it as, when I started working at this school, I was kind of given, if you will, research findings that say, like, it's really good for kids to get out of the classroom. And it's important to partner with community members, right? And I was gonna take that and the fact that I had all this time in the schedule to plan these outings to then say, okay, how am I gonna implement this research into my practice? And now that I'm sharing it with you guys and we're having this shared conversation, what do we envision that revolution stage, that relation point, and more to be? So we'll come back to that. All right, so my first example that I want to talk to you about is this criminal justice system unit that I designed for my 11th and 12th grade US literature students. So these are 2 pictures of 2 different community partners that we worked with during this unit. We probably in total worked with maybe 10 different people / organizations. And the one on the right, you'll actually see that these are my students mixed in with some of the folks who work at this organization together having a discussion, which is what a lot of our time with these partners looked like. And I just want to, explain how this started because back in 2019, when I was working at a different school in Boston, actually, I did almost kind of like a guest teaching situation for a week with a group of students from Atlanta and Philly who were studying the criminal justice system here. They got, there was this whole program where they would visit different organizations and then just leave and go back to Atlanta. And I remember thinking that the partners that the organizations they visited were so amazing. What if students in Philly could experience this and it wouldn't just end after a week? It would be something that they would continue to engage with. And so that kind of planted a seed. And then because our high school is so small, and I taught all of my 11th and 12th graders last year, I knew them well as people. And so I already kind of knew some of their values and interests and background. And I knew that a lot of my students cared about crime in the city. There's a lot of violence, a lot of statistics are really high in Philadelphia right now for gun violence, etc. And I know that a lot of my students have family members, parents, friends, close loved ones who are incarcerated, or folks, they have parents who are police officers or correctional officers. So I already knew that this was something that my students had kind of like a close positionality to. And so at the beginning of this school year, I did a survey and I asked them, okay, I'm going to get to have a whole quarter that I get to plan and that I want your input on for our US literature course. And I have this idea from what I know about you and what I know about the city of doing a criminal justice system unit. And I wanted to know, like, are they interested in it? What kinds of organizations would they like to visit? And what I was really the most concerned about was, if it would be too heavy for them because of what I mentioned about how they have loved ones who are in all different types of positions within the system. But they were interested, they wanted to, they gave me some recommendations about organizations that they'd like to see. And this is all what I then took to create this unit, which actually we just finished about a week ago. So it was this spring. Let's see. I would like to also point out how in this picture on the right, you can see that I'm holding my phone out, and what I'm actually doing there is recording the whole discussion, which is something that I asked, days in advance of the people there, would you be comfortable with it? And that recording would actually later be transcribed. And my students would get to look through it, and something that back when I was like a research student would have found very helpful for coding and stuff like that. But these students are actually seeing these types of excursions as opportunities to do research. We call it fieldwork. I'll have a slide about that later. And they are later going to go through that data and pick out stuff that they will use, whether it's in a paper or a discussion that they're going to lead or to connect to a book that we're reading. So I just wanted to point that out. We can go to the next slide.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
So another use, so the recordings have also been uploaded into a tool that I'll talk about later. And there are 4 other schools participating in similar excursions. We're going to be able to create a research study that I'll describe, but it's through the methodology that Sid just explained of really understanding what is important to the students, where are they going to feel engaged, and then these conversations have been collected, and we're saving for the end a little bit about how we're using this as a part of a research study that's been co-created.
So the last partner that I'll talk about for this first example of the criminal justice system unit is the Philadelphia Defenders. That's just the Office of Public Defenders of Philadelphia. And what I loved about this partner in this unit is that when I reached out to them and I said, I think that my students are really interested in what you guys work on. We're doing this unit right now. It's a huge opportunity. And they actually said, yeah, let's set up a meeting and let's talk about it. And they came over and they wanted to know, what did our students want? What did I want? And it was just kind of like this two-way street of communication of needs and wants. And so we ended up creating this plan together. They let the students come over to their office, which is just a few blocks away. And here in the top right picture, you can see that the students are actually talking to one of the guys from the defender's office about the state of the prisons on State Road in Philadelphia. And he's actually showing them how big is a prison cell on State Road. And so our students, they got to ask, they probably had the Philly Defenders had about 7 representatives who worked in different areas. And they were explaining to the students what they do. And the students were capturing data from that. And this was earlier on in the unit so that the students could kind of think about what are they interested in? What topic did they want to choose and write about using this research that they're doing on all these different excursions. And then the Philly Defenders actually reached out a little bit after that, and they had said, we would love to run a focus group with your students to ask them about mental health, gun violence, education, and more. Would you be willing to do that? And so they got to come back, and this time they asked our students the questions, and they were the ones that were doing research. So we kind of like took turns having that researcher and researched position. And they also, they want to have more relationships going forward, involving my students in their internship programs. And so any of my students who want to be lawyers in the future, this is just a huge new pathway for them as well.
We also, as a side note, were able to be part of a very similar connection with the Philadelphia Police Department. They were engaging in a reform effort, and they brought a qualitative researcher from Baltimore in, and throughout the city, they held listening circles with young people to collect information on their experiences with police. And then they turned it around and they brought the police in to tell their stories, plainclothes police officers. So our students get involved in these real authentic situations. And these are parts of research studies that are being conducted and co-created with the students that are really meaningful.
Okay, the second example I'd like to talk to you about, this was not a unit per se. This was a project that we did in partnership with an artist, Cheryl Oring, who is also a dean at the University of the Arts, which is also just a few blocks away. And this is something that we discussed with her and others in the beginning of the year. And we kind of did over a series of kind of like every few weeks, we would kind of have another interaction together. And basically, Cheryl Oring, she has this project, this art project that she's been doing for decades called I Wish to Say. And that picture on the left is of her, and she always dresses up. She puts this whole setup, this background. She has these old vintage typewriters, and she will have strangers come up to her because they're kind of like, oh, what's going on here? What's this typewriter? What's this setup? And she asks them, what would you like to say to the next president? And she types it up, and then she puts these installations up of people's letters. She mails the letters. She makes videos about it. And you know, now that she's decades into this work, she's interested in other people doing her project and different iterations with different parameters than her. And so our first interaction, one of them was our students getting to participate in her art project. They would say what they wanted to, they would dictate it to her, what they want to say to the next president. She would type it up. And I was able to, as the teacher, say, hey, I think I want to put parameters on what the students can say so that it really aligns with our curricular goals. So I said, hey, our 9th and 10th grade students, they're writing persuasive speeches right now about issues that they care about. I would like for them to say something that they want to say to the next president that pertains to their issue. And with the 11th and 12th graders, they actually dictated postcards that were mostly about criminal justice system issues since they were studying that. So I loved that I was able to do that in our partnership. And then our students were the ones who she said, okay, you've experienced this, you know, I have a bunch of typewriters, you guys can learn how to use them and you can do it. And I worked with the Kimmel Center, which is just a few blocks away, to make this happen. And here are our students transcribing messages that the attendees of a Beethoven matinee had to say. And the next stage of this project, which is on the next slide, is that the students then took the postcards, both the ones that they had dictated and the ones that they had transcribed of others' messages, and curated them to create 8 different variations of zines, also with artwork that they collectively made in a collage style with some of the printmaking grad students at University of the Arts in their printmaking spaces using their resources. And here they are cutting up those zines after they've already curated them and decided which one goes in each and folding them up. And then on the right, you can see that they're doing something called a book bomb, in which they each have a bunch of those zines in their bag and they're just putting them in different public places for people to find. And at this point, after, you know, several months doing this, are really the creators, the owners of this, of their version of this project. Oh, one more thing I wanted to say about the last slide, actually. One thing that I love, I think that really speaks to the connection that we had to grow with the artist, is that even though this artist had been doing this project for decades and has had other students, though not high school students, she's had college students try out this project, is one of our students was the first person to ever ask her, what do you wish to say to the next US president? And nobody in all the decades had ever asked her that. And so it was very touching and emotional for her. And my student typed up her postcard. And I think that just really speaks to, you know, the fact of how our students were seeing her and interacting with her. Okay, I see, Jacqueline, that you need to hop off. Thanks for joining for what you could. Okay, this is my third example, and this is a partnership with Cosmic Writers. And this is actually a partnership that already had been started by Jane, really, when I joined Revolution School. And she and others were telling me, you know, there's this organization run by this woman, Roanna, and it's really awesome. And they get these grad writing students to come in and teach these little one-off courses to the students. They can do it about poetry or essay writing or whatever you want. And so I trusted that being passed down to me, and I said, okay, yeah, of course, I'm open to it. Let's try it. They came in and did some workshops with the kids. And as this happened, of course, I'm growing my connection with Rowana, who leads the organization. And eventually, you know, we were in a place where we were just exchanging ideas. And she had said, is there anything that you would want help with? And I said, actually, yeah, because this year I really wanted to try doing a filmmaking unit with my 9th and 10th graders, but I don't have any background in film or screenwriting. So I said, look, I think I really want to do this, but I would need some support. I would need some experts to come in. Do you have any film students? And she did. She connected me with students from UPenn, and you can see them here guest teaching in my class to my students in that top right picture. They're teaching them about story arcs. And that was huge in giving them some of the structures that they needed to go ahead and start writing. They helped them with like the software, the technical stuff. And then here's actually a picture from today on the lower left of my 9th and 10th graders starting to actually film. At this point, they have finished writing. And this is actually a fake bedroom set that we created at school in one of the rooms for one of their films. So you can see the girl that's standing. She is taking a shot from above, and there's the actress sleeping there, and there is the film director and writer on the right holding the screenplay. All right, this is the slide I was saying I would come back to. So when the language that we use here at Revolution for these excursions, these interactions, what most schools would probably call field trips, is field work, because it really is core to our curriculum and to our school rather than just something that's added on that complements the curriculum. We have to partner and with our community to do what we do. So we have this time built into our schedule, our regular schedule. Every week we are spending hours with community partners, and we call this field work. And sometimes it really is like research field work because the students are collecting data and they're gonna have to use it. We do use the term data when they're out on field work, when they're doing a unit like the criminal justice unit. And we refer to these as partnerships. We don't really use the word extracurricular much at our school. And I just wanted to end by coming back to these two visuals again, thinking about when there is high versus low connection, which sometimes there is low connection at first with a partnership when you start it. Sometimes I think about how there's even already from the beginning a high connection just because of how my students resonate with and connect with the partners, what they have in common, the positionality that they have to a topic. They might already be in solidarity with each other. And then I think about power with and power over, which, you know, now that I'm like a teacher rather than a researcher, this is something I feel like I have to worry about less, because typically as a teacher with young students, I don't have to worry about having the power in a lot of situations and a lot of these relationships. But I love how there is still a power dynamic that is switching with a lot of the partnerships. And then I'll just end with this, maybe for you to think about what points that this maps out onto, and allowing us to think about what is each of our vision for the revolution point and the research and practice point. What does it look like for this to kind of be a cycle between research and practice? So I hope that was kind of clear enough, and those were my examples.
Thank you. So I am just going to end with the co-creation of research. We have one more model to share. There are a lot of models here. But we've been referring to this without naming it. And so I'm sticking it in here to just share the idea that very frequently in research, we start at that zone 3. And in practice, in programmatic creation and looking at how to conduct research studies. And what we have found is that if we want our ideas to influence and sustain our resources, if we want our partners and ourselves to have influence with the work that we're doing, we need to start with purpose and people and participate in each other's work before getting to projects and pilots. And so typical partnering is usually like researchers look for partners, but what we're trying to say is we need to think about co-creation by stakeholders. Instead of having educators like Sid and others for input and consultancy, ways to ensure that they have agency and insight allows for co-creation. And instead of using research in the classroom, which maybe you would do, there are times for it, but finding ways to also ensure that we're co-creating the research so that the research and the sense making can be shared. I'm going to skip this one for now and just tell you a little bit about, as we end, a study that we're doing. School of Thought and the Constructive Conversation Center at MIT have introduced what is really a qualitative research AI tool across 5 schools that are participating and 5 sector partners. And we have used the opportunity to engage in a study that looks at human listening and machine learning. Our question is, what are the effects of machine learning on listening and participant-created conversation projects? And so Sid had a photograph of one of those recording opportunities where she was recording a conversation. The various opportunities to record also then allow students to go back through transcripts and to code those transcripts. And we're going to have opportunities to make meaning from those transcripts across schools and sectors. And we're looking for the use of machine learning and human listening in terms of like, is it feasible in these settings? Is it an efficient use? Does it bring value? But we're also looking at human factors, like how do the students feel when they can transcribe and really spend time listening? What is the effectiveness of the listening and how does that change over time with machine learning? And how does the conversation quality change? And these are such important skills to teach, but also to research. And we are able to do both through this partnership. So again, we're trying to get to this idea of research and practice working together, being part of a shared culture. And I'll end with these messages. We want to work with, not for. Something we sort of alluded to, but there's an acronym that I've been playing with. So frequently, research is inaccessible for practitioners. And if we can keep it FAIR, which stands for free, accessible, interpretable, and ready to use, and that is also in the article that Sarah and I wrote, but if we can keep it FAIR, we'll have more opportunities to have research make it to practice and practice make it to research. So finding questions and solutions together, elevating our unique roles, and not tokenizing the practitioner wisdom that comes with all of that. So that, I know we have a very small group right now, but I wonder if we could leave with just like, who are your co-creators? If you could think about that as you listen. And we would love to follow up with you. I would love if you are so inspired. A lot of the stories behind the work that we're doing can be found on the School of Thought blog. It's a place for us to amplify and share much of the learning that we're doing, and we take research and bring it to practice and show examples of that. So please subscribe to the blog and feel free to contact us.
So while you're thinking of questions, first I want to just thank Jane and Sid tremendously for this. I know we had someone, Rachel, we welcome you, and I know you came late. But, you know, for any of the qualitative people out there who may be viewing this at some point in the future, this is exactly the kind of thing that in my almost 17 years of being part of NERA, we need more examples of this. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, our call for workshops is open now. Our call for proposals is open now. And I'm really hoping that the takeaway from this session inspires people to submit what they are doing in their local communities, whether it's in K-12 or higher ed or any place else in the community, because it's very clear from watching all of this. And, you know, I don't live in Philadelphia, but I enjoy visiting Philadelphia. And I know there's a new administration in the mayor's office and a lot of transformation going on, and there's a lot of good, positive energy from what I have seen from the new mayor, Cheryl Parker, and I'm hoping that she can facilitate the kind of change that Philadelphia needs. But, Sid mentioned that she was in Boston, but like a lot of it's not just the larger communities, it's the smaller communities that we don't hear about in the news. And that's exactly why this kind of work really has really good potential applications anywhere, and getting students involved, taking advantage of those unique course offerings that you have, or to bring outside speakers in, and that just goes a long way to help shape student mindsets, student trajectories for what they want to do after graduating high school, and whatever they want to do beyond that. So this is really, really great work, and I want to thank you both, and just wish you much continued success with what you're doing, because it's very clear how much you've put into this, and it seems to be paying dividends already. So congratulations on that. So yeah, Rachel, Eduardo, Kevin, if you'd like to come off mute and ask any questions, you're more than welcome to.
Hi, I would love to. I'm just sitting in my toddler's acting class, so I have to be a little quiet. But I can't wait to catch up on the slides and see everything that you're working on. But thank you for having me. Sorry I couldn't speak or turn my camera on, and I was late, but I'm happy to be here and connect.
I'm glad you're here and understand all the things that we are holding and balancing. So really appreciate that you're here to listen.
Absolutely. Yes, I did not want to miss this. Thank you so much.
And Rachel, where are you joining us from?
New York.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have to mute myself
Okay.
now.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
People can always get in touch with us too. I think that, Sid and I have had a few things that we got to sort of work in, and I would frame as co-creation. We're always looking for ways to share the story or share the things that we've learned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And subscribe to the blog.
Exactly. Yeah, and one other thing I'll point out, because Eduardo is here, for those who don't already know, he is one of the co-chairs for the 2025 conference. So, I'm hoping he's taking in some of this content, and hopefully is already thinking about how their team is going to integrate it into their planning for next year.
Yeah, it was great work. It reminded me of stuff I used to do when I was a teacher, high school teacher back home in Puerto Rico, trying to incorporate co-creation and co-design styles into a classroom, and something we're trying to currently work on for large scale assessments and standardized testing, which is becoming a bit of a challenge.
Sure.
To do the co-design process in that regard. But we are coming up with ideas. And it's a lot to learn, and I like the lens of the social justice. It's something I never thought about it before. Just on top of already including people in the creation of stuff, which it's itself a way to make things more culturally responsive and more socially justice. Actually, the work you're doing showcases how it can happen, how things can merge together. I think that's very important, and for sure, listening here and would share with one colleague I have here on my side. It's also a co-chair for the 2025 NERA session, and it's topics like this stuff we want to bring for next year. So, conference.
Thank you.
If
So
I
just before we hit the top of the hour, I just want to make an announcement that our next webinar will be on Wednesday, May 1st. As has become the tradition, the conference team usually during the period where the call for proposals is open does a webinar to just walk through the process so that people who are considering submissions just kind of get an idea about what to expect. We have been trying to do a lot of planning among the various NERA committees to make the conference experience as great as it possibly can be. We are, you know, for those who have been coming a long time, they already know that. But if you haven't come before, it is a wonderful couple of days in Trumbull, Connecticut. So we hope you'll join us. So my co-chairs and I will be facilitating that session, which we will also record and put up on the website with slides afterwards. So again, that's Wednesday, May 1st, and that will take place at 12 noon to 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. But again, we'll have the video so you can watch that at any point. And Jane, Sid, any closing comments or?
Thank you for having us. It's so nice to get to have the opportunity. And though I know it's a hard time of day, I'm really, I am being very honest in saying that people can get in touch with us. And also I would love to hear what other people are doing. I was going to say, Eduardo, it was very interesting to hear just even the idea of co-designing assessment. That's something that we have some experience in when I was working for a measurement organization. And I think it's hard work, but it's really important work. So thank you for doing that. And I would love to find ways to learn more.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'll
Well,
echo what Jane said. Thanks for being a great host as well. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, I'm glad this worked out. I'm glad to have you. Hopefully there, you know, once we get it up on the website, maybe you'll get more comments and more contact from our members. But you know, I definitely want to thank you for your time and your energy and your effort into this, putting this presentation together. And to those who were able to attend, thank you for coming. And enjoy the rest of your afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. And again, look out for our next webinar Wednesday, May 1st about the conference. But in the meantime, take care, stay well, and thank you again.